Imagine this. It's 40,000 years ago, and you're crouched inside a cave somewhere in what is now France. Outside, the wind is screaming. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the firelight, something with teeth is watching you. Your child died last winter. Your brother was killed by a cave lion. You have no idea why the sun disappears every night or whether it will come back. You have no therapist, no medication, no support group, no concept of mental health at all. And yet, you're fine. Not just surviving, functioning, laughing around the fire, falling in love, making art on the walls of your cave that still takes our breath away 30,000 years later. Here's the question that should keep you up tonight. How? How did ancient humans endure a life soaked in trauma, starvation, violence, grief, constant unpredictable death, without collapsing into the anxiety and depression that plagues so many of us today, in the safest, most comfortable era our species has ever known? Because here's where things get strange. By every modern measurement, ancient life should have broken the human mind. Life expectancy hovered around 30. Nearly half of all children died before adulthood. Violence was so common that some anthropologists estimate it caused up to 15% of all deaths in early human societies. That's not a statistic. That's a world where almost everyone you loved might vanish, violently, without warning. So why didn't they go insane? For decades, scientists assumed they must have. Early anthropologists imagined prehistoric life the way Thomas Hobbes famously described it: nasty, brutish, and short, and psychologically shattered to match. But when researchers actually started studying the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or the Kung in the Kalahari, something didn't add up. These communities, living lives strikingly similar to our ancestors, showed remarkably low rates of depression and anxiety. Not zero, but strikingly, consistently low. Lower in many studies than industrialized nations sitting on mountains of medicine, therapy, and technological comfort. That's the twist that changes everything. We assumed safety produces sanity, but the evidence suggests something far stranger. Safety alone isn't what protects the mind. Something else was happening. Something we lost. So let's rewind, because the answer isn't one thing. It's a hidden architecture of survival that shaped the human brain for 200,000 years, and most of it has quietly vanished from modern life. First, they were never alone with their pain. Picture grief today. Someone loses a loved one, and after a week or two, the world expects them to go back to normal, back to emails, back to deadlines, back to smiling in meetings. Grief becomes a private burden, processed in isolation, often at 2 a.m. scrolling a phone in the dark. Now picture grief 40,000 years ago. The entire group stops. There are rituals. There is wailing together, out loud, for days. There is touch, actual physical contact, arms around you, bodies pressed close for warmth and comfort. Anthropologists call this co-regulation, the nervous system calming itself by syncing with another nervous system nearby. It's why a crying infant stops crying when held. The parent's steady heartbeat literally recalibrates the child's stress response. Ancient humans had this, constantly, for their entire lives. Every meal, every night by the fire, every hunt, surrounded by 15 to 50 people who knew their name, their history, their pain. Modern humans, especially in cities, can go days without a single meaningful conversation. We've built a species built for constant social regulation, and then we handed it isolation and called it progress. But here's where it gets even stranger, because connection alone doesn't explain it either. There's a second piece almost nobody talks about: meaning. In hunter-gatherer societies, every single day had an unmistakable purpose. You woke up and you knew exactly why you existed that day: find food, protect the group, teach a child, build a shelter. There was no ambiguity, no existential fog. Your value to the tribe was immediate, visible, and undeniable. Compare that to now. Millions of people wake up, commute for an hour, sit in front of a screen answering emails that vanish into a void, and go home wondering what any of it actually meant. Psychologists have a term for this creeping despair: meaning deficit. And it turns out, a brain without a clear reason to exist is far more vulnerable to anxiety and depression than a brain constantly under physical threat but anchored by purpose. That's almost impossible to accept, isn't it? That knowing you might die by a lion attack next week could be less psychologically damaging than not knowing why you're alive at all. But the data keeps pointing there. And then there's the third piece, maybe the strangest of all: movement. Ancient humans walked on average 5 to 9 miles a day, not for exercise, not for a fitness app streak, just to live. Movement was baked into existence, and movement, we now know, floods the brain with the exact neurochemicals, serotonin, dopamine, BDNF, that modern antidepressants are engineered to artificially replicate. In other words, their medication was simply being alive the way bodies were built to be alive. We didn't defeat that system, we dismantled it, piece by piece, generation by generation, and called it civilization. But wait, before this turns into a simple story of ancient good, modern bad, here's the twist that complicates everything. Ancient humans weren't invincible. They experienced trauma. They had rituals specifically designed to process psychosis, grief-induced breakdowns, and unexplainable behavior, which tells us mental suffering has always existed. It's not new. What's new is the isolation surrounding it. Some anthropologists believe certain shamans throughout history were, by modern definitions, experiencing symptoms resembling schizophrenia or dissociation, and instead of being isolated or medicated, they were elevated, given a role, a community position. Their unusual mind was reframed not as broken, but as a gift to the spiritual world. Sit with that for a second. The same neurological pattern that might get someone hospitalized today could, in a different social structure, be interpreted as a gift. That's not a call to abandon modern psychiatry. It's undeniably saved millions of lives, but it does reveal something uncomfortable. Mental illness isn't just biology, it's context. A brain doesn't suffer in a vacuum, it suffers based on whether the tribe around it holds it or lets it fall. And that brings us to the real, quietly devastating answer to our original mystery. Ancient humans didn't avoid insanity because their lives were easier. Their lives were imaginably harder. They avoided psychological collapse because they were never isolated in their suffering, never without purpose, and never separated from the physical rhythms their bodies evolved for. We removed the threats, the lions, the famine, the freezing nights, and felt certain the mind would follow and heal. But the mind wasn't built for comfort. It was built for connection, purpose, and motion. And we quietly took two of those away while congratulating ourselves on inventing the third. Here's the final, uncomfortable thought to leave you with. Somewhere right now, a person is lying in a warm bed, in a safe home, with food in the fridge and no predators anywhere nearby, and still can't sleep, mind racing, heart pounding, utterly convinced something is wrong. And in a strange, haunting way, they might be right. Not because danger is coming, but because for 200,000 years, the human nervous system learned safety through connection, not comfort. And comfort, without connection, is a language the ancient brain still doesn't understand. Maybe the real question was never why ancient humans stayed sane. Maybe it's why we assumed modern comfort ever would.